Lydia tossed in her sleep, her brow furrowed as the dream took hold again. The same shadowy figure loomed in the darkness, its features indistinct but undeniably human. Night after night, it inched closer, its edges sharpening like a photograph slowly coming into focus. She told herself it was just stress. Her job at the bookstore was exhausting, and her insomnia wasn't helping. But when she woke with a gasp, her arms stinging, she couldn't rationalize it away. 3 thin, angry scratches ran from her wrist to her elbow, as if claws had raked her skin in the night. She sat up, heart pounding, and turned on the lamp. The room was empty. No intruders, no branches tapping at the window, just the quiet hum of the city outside. Lydia examined the marks, her breath shallow. They weren't deep enough to bleed, but they burned, as though something had touched her with a purpose. And then she remembered in the dream just before waking, the blurry face had lunged at her, not hers, never hers. A stranger's face, twisted in a smile that didn't belong in any normal dream. By morning, the scratches had faded to faint pink lines, but the dread lingered. She tried to shrug it off as she got ready for work, but her reflection in the mirror gave her pause. For a second, she thought she saw something. A flicker of movement behind her, a shape in the corner of her eye. But when she turned, there was nothing. Just her, alone in the apartment. That night, she triple-checked the locks before bed. But as she drifted off, the face was already waiting for her. Closer now, sharper. And this time, she could almost make out the words it was whispering. Lydia's nights had become a relentless cycle of terror. The blurry face in her dreams grew sharper with each passing night, its features twisting into something unmistakably human, but not hers. The scratches on her arms, deep and angry, were proof that whatever haunted her sleep was reaching into the waking world. Desperate for answers, she scoured the internet, her fingers trembling over the keyboard. She stumbled upon a forum where an anonymous user mentioned an ancient text, the Book of Whispers, rumored to document a spirit that preyed on dreamers. The next day, Lydia visited the dimly lit basement of a forgotten occult bookstore. The owner, a gaunt man with sunken eyes, seemed to already know why she was there. Without a word, he handed her a crumbling leather-bound tome. The book's pages were yellowed, the ink fading, but the words were chillingly clear. It spoke of the sleeper, a vengeful entity that thrived in the depths of sleep. The spirit would manifest as a blurred face, growing more distinct each night until it mirrored the dreamer's own reflection. A sign of total possession. Victims would wake to find their bodies no longer their own, their souls smothered as the sleeper wore their skin like a suit. Lydia's breath hitched as she read the warning. Once the face is clear, the bond is sealed. The sleeper walks, the dreamer fades. Her hands shook as she flipped to the last page, where a name was scrawled in jagged script, Evelyn. A cold dread settled in her chest. The face in her dreams now had a name, and time was running out. Lydia sat across from Mark at the dimly lit diner, her fingers nervously tracing the fresh scratches on her arms. She leaned in, voice barely above a whisper, and recounted the dreams. The blurry face that grew clearer each night, the sense of being watched even in sleep. Mark listened, his brow furrowing, his coffee untouched. "You've been under a lot of stress," he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Maybe it's just your brain's way of processing stuff. Have you thought about seeing someone? A therapist, I mean." Lydia's shoulders slumped. She'd hoped for more, for belief, for answers. That night, Mark tossed in his bed, his sleep thin and restless. Just before dawn, he jolted awake, his skin clammy. He dreamed of a face, pale, gaunt, its features shifting like smoke, yet somehow familiar. He rubbed his eyes and stumbled to the bathroom, flicking on the light. The reflection in the mirror was his, but not quite. The corners of its mouth twitched, then stretched into a grin too wide, too sharp. His own face stared back, eyes gleaming with something inhuman. A choked gasp escaped him as the reflection tilted its head, a movement he hadn't made. His pulse pounded in his throat. Mark staggered back, gripping the sink for balance. The smile in the mirror didn't fade. When he blinked, it was gone. Just his own exhausted face pale with fear. But the dread lingered thick and sour. He thought of Lydia's scratches, her desperate eyes. What had she dragged him into? Lydia's fingers trembled as she turned the brittle pages of the Book of Whispers, the ancient leather binding cracking under her grip. The more she read, the more the words seemed to writhe on the page, as if alive. Near the back, tucked between 2 yellowed sheets, she found a photograph. Sepia, toned and frayed at the edges. Her breath caught in her throat. The woman in the image stared back at her with hollow, knowing eyes. It was her. The face from her dreams. The caption beneath the photo was faded but legible: Evelyn Voss, 1683, condemned. Lydia's pulse quickened as she traced the words. Frantic, she flipped through the book for more, her nails digging into the paper. A passage detailed Evelyn's fate. An outcast in a small village, accused of witchcraft after children began vanishing in the night. The townsfolk didn't hang or burn her. They buried her alive, convinced her curse would die with her beneath the earth. But it hadn't. Lydia's hands shook as she reread the lines. The book claimed Evelyn's spirit had learned to walk in dreams, seeking vessels to reclaim the life stolen from her. The closer the dreamer got to seeing her face clearly, the stronger her grip became. Soon, she wouldn't just visit Lydia's sleep, she would take over entirely. A cold draft slithered through the room, though the windows were shut. Lydia flinched as the photograph fluttered from her grasp, landing face up on the floor. Evelyn's eyes seemed to follow her, lips curling into a smile that hadn't been there before. That night, Lydia dreamt of dirt pressing down on her chest, of screams muffled by earth. And when she woke, her sheets were stained with soil, her fingers caked in it. As if she'd been digging herself out of a grave. Lydia's reflection no longer obeyed her. Each morning, she would stare into the bathroom mirror, and the face staring back would linger a second too long after she turned away. The scratch marks on her arms had multiplied, forming strange, deliberate patterns, letters in a language she didn't understand. At night, the dreams had stopped being dreams at all. Instead, it felt like she was standing in a darkened room, watching as Evelyn's face, sharp, gaunt, and grinning, dominated her vision. The woman's lips moved, whispering words that slithered into Lydia's skull like worms. During the day, blackouts began. She'd blink, and suddenly hours had passed. Objects in her apartment were moved. Knives left on the counter when she never used them, the air thick with the scent of damp earth. The worst was when she caught her own hand moving without her command, fingers twitching as if plucking invisible threads from the air. Mark noticed first. He'd been dismissive before, but after his own nightmare, he watched Lydia carefully. The way her voice sometimes dropped into a guttural rasp. The unnatural stillness when she thought no one was looking. Then, one night, he woke to the weight of someone standing over his bed. The room was pitch black, but he could see the glint of the knife in Lydia's hand. Her eyes were voids, her smile stretching too wide, teeth gleaming in the sliver of moonlight. "You'll help me dig, won't you?" she whispered. Except it wasn't Lydia's voice, it was something older, hungrier. Mark recoiled, but she was faster, pressing the blade to his throat. "You'll help me finish what they started." The last thing he saw before she vanished into the shadows was the Book of Whispers clutched in her other hand. And the faint, wailing scream trapped inside its pages. The shovel bit into the damp earth with a wet crunch, each thrust sending a ripple of dread down Mark's spine. Moonlight barely pierced the thick canopy of the cemetery, casting jagged shadows that seemed to twist as he worked. Sweat stung his eyes, but he didn't dare stop. Lydia was counting on him. The book had said the curse could be broken if he unearthed Evelyn's remains and burned them. But as the hole deepened, his hope withered. The coffin was there, its wood splintered with age, but the inside was empty. No bones, no cloth, nothing but a handful of dried leaves and the faint, rotten scent of something that shouldn't be gone. A cold breath brushed the back of his neck. Mark spun, heart hammering. Lydia stood inches away, her pale face eerily serene. But her eyes, black pools reflecting no light, were wrong. Her lips curled into a smile too wide, too knowing. "You shouldn't have come here," she whispered, her voice layered with something ancient. The words slithered into his ears, echoing the phrases Mark had read in the book. The same ones Evelyn had spat at her accusers before they buried her alive. He stumbled back, but the grave's edge trapped him. Lydia advanced, her movements smooth, unnatural. The knife in her hand glinted, and for the first time, Mark understood Evelyn had never been in the grave. She'd been waiting, watching, and now she had Lydia. The wind died, the night held its breath, then she lunged. Mark's hands trembled as he recited the ancient incantation from the brittle pages of the Book of Whispers. The cemetery air was thick with the stench of damp earth and something darker, something rotten. Lydia's body convulsed before him, her fingers clawing at the ground as Evelyn's spirit fought against the ritual. The words spilled from his lips, each syllable feeling like a weight lifted, until Lydia suddenly went still. Her chest rose once, twice, then fell into silence. The wind howled as the book in his hand seared with unnatural heat, its pages writhing like leaf things. A guttural scream, Evelyn's, ripped through the night before vanishing into the book's depths. With a gasp, Lydia collapsed. Mark rushed to her side, relief flooding him as her eyelids fluttered open. Her eyes were her own again, clear and human. But the victory felt hollow. The book pulsed in his grip, whispering promises in a language he couldn't understand. He knew what he had to do. He struck a match and held it to the pages. Flames licked hungrily at the parchment, its screams not of burning paper but of something trapped, something furious. As the last embers died, he heard it, a soft, mocking laugh, right beside his ear. That night, as Mark lay in bed, exhaustion dragging him into sleep, the dream came. The face, Evelyn's face, materialized from the dark, clearer than ever. Her lips curled into a smile, her black eyes locking onto his. Then, his own reflection in the mirror twitched, its grin widening far beyond human. The whisper slithered through his mind, "You should have known. The curse doesn't end. He woke with a jerk, heart hammering, and saw the first scratch on his arm.